Welcome to Genuine Gainz. I'm Meredith Mistro, and I'm here to help you find mental and physical wellness that feels true to you. Life can be overwhelming, and taking care of yourself shouldn't add to that stress. So whether you're seeking inspiration, practical tips, or just a little encouragement, you're in the right spot. We'll share real stories and resources to help you find your own path to wellness, one that fits your life and your goals. Let's make those genuine gains your way. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am very excited about today's episode, but I apologize in advance if you're watching me on video because I look kind of homeless, or maybe like I just got out of prison. Not that, okay, this is already off to a great start. You know, if you've ever been to prison, I just want you to know I think there are a lot of beautiful people who have been to prison. So I'm not trying to say that you look bad if you're coming out of prison. I would just imagine that after serving your time, you're probably not in the best mood, and maybe that reflects on your face. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is that it has been a long day. I am not at my best, but you know what? It's a best time to record the podcast. Oh, words. You know what I meant to say there. It's a great time to record a podcast. You're probably like, oh, great, we're a minute in and she's already making no sense. Anyway, I am excited about today's episode. Although I am tired, I think it is a really great reminder for me that it's time to do some self-care. And for me, actually recording these episodes is a form of self-care. I personally love doing this, so I'm getting my self-care in while talking to you about how to get your self-care in. So I think it's a win-win situation if you ask me. But if you missed the first episode of this series, I want to do a quick little reflection and look back. I started the series off maybe in a way that a lot of people wouldn't typically expect of a series like this. Obviously, this is the Self-Care Toolbox, but I think everyone, when they think of self-care, just thinks about, being told, oh, go meditate for 30 minutes a day, make sure you get good sleep, eat, exercise, take care of yourself. And I kind of started the series off with a different approach from the bat. I wanted to talk about one of the biggest hurdles that got in my way when I was starting to really try and practice self-care consistently, and it still gets in my way today. And that is the hurdle of low energy or low motivation. I wanted to start there with something that is a roadblock for so many people, rather than just getting straight into, well, this is what you should do and this is how you should do it. I also don't think I'm that kind of person to give that advice. I've definitely done that on the podcast, don't get me wrong, but my brand is very much focused on helping you find what works for you rather than prescribing something very specific. I think I've mentioned that quite a few times, but I feel like I can never mention it enough because it definitely goes against what a lot of influencers and brands out there right now do. Usually it is very prescription based, and that's how you make a business. So I totally don't judge it. I support it. I think my value prop, if you will, is just based on not just offering you a solution in terms of one tangible thing, but rather making the solution whatever you want it to be. And I know that's very woo-woo and vague, but I hope that today's episode is a good example of what I'm trying to achieve with my brand, because in today's episode, I'm going to start to give you some ideas, but not one solution to what self-care could look like for you. I still want us to have last week's episode in the back of our head when we go through this, because I know firsthand that I can say all of this to you today, and there could still be that concern there of, okay, well, Meredith, I don't have the energy to actually implement this. I don't have the motivation to find the time in my day to implement this. And I just want you to know, I still see you. I still hear you. That's why I literally made that episode. But what I hope is by kind of going through a master list of techniques today, that I can start to get your creative juices flowing and help you find things that seem interesting or exciting, or maybe things you're just willing to think about more, not to say you have to commit. In fact, let me just start here. I'm going to be telling you a lot today, a lot of self-care tips, tricks, habits that you might not have thought of when you think of self-care in itself. But I don't want you to leave this episode feeling like you have to choose right now. We still have some episodes left in this series, and yeah, by the end of it, it would be great if you listened to my last episode. You know, I have this challenge for everyone to pick one self-care practice to try implementing. That would be great, but that does not mean you have to pick it today. This is just the first step, giving you all the options that I can think of, all the options that I heard from other people. Thank you, by the way, if you participated in my Instagram story poll. Really appreciate that. Anyway, follow me on Instagram if you haven't. Little plug there. I'm also out of breath, and it has literally been a few minutes. Great. This is, again, off to a great start. That said, I'm giving you all this today. I don't expect you to do anything with it today, but I do hope that you can listen and also listen to your body and your mind as you hear these things. And if something sparks an emotion within you, take note of that, because that probably means something, maybe good, maybe bad. You don't have to define it right now, but I would say even when I was putting this list together, I found that a few of them really just made me super excited. And a few of them I was like, oh, this sounds actually miserable right now. And that's okay. That's literally just part of the process. So try and take note of which ones do that for you. And I think we'll be good to go for our future episodes from here. But before I give you the list, before I get into today's full master list of self-care habits, I want to start with a more general definition of what defines a self-care technique, habit, practice, whatever you want to call it. I talked about this a bit in last week's episode. There are these foundational self-care practices, as in sleep, eat, exercise, but those are kind of the things that I think a lot of us need to do to live, or at least to live in a healthy way. Self-care, as I'll be defining it today, and as I defined it in the last episode, is to me a little bit more of those smaller incremental habits that are not necessarily going to make or break your entire life, but if nothing else, will add to your life, will help your mental health and maybe your physical health along the way. But they're little things that you can incorporate into your days that are not as maybe intense or overwhelming as something like eating a certain way or getting a certain number of hours of sleep, but still can be equally important to making you feel your best. Beyond that, though, there are 4 different elements that I kind of put to the test when I am deciding whether or not something I do in my day counts as self-care. These are things that I quite honestly never consciously think about in order. Don't worry, I'm not that crazy. I'm not over here like, all right, I want to go eat ice cream right now. Hold on though. Let me make sure it checks the 4 boxes of self-care. Like, no, I'm not that crazy. Not that that is crazy. If you do that, you're not crazy. Okay. Just like, if you were in prison, you're not crazy. Well, maybe. Okay. The 4 qualities that I'm going to discuss today are just things, again, to think about as I go through this list I'm about to share. The number one thing, and this is something that I've actually heard other people say, so it's not coming from me. It is not from my brain, unfortunately. But I think a really great way that I've heard from other people to define a self-care habit is to ask yourself if it keeps you in the present moment, or if it takes you back to the past, or takes you forward to the future in the form of, if it's past, maybe rumination, overthinking. If it's in the future, maybe anxiety, maybe also overthinking. If you can't tell, I tend to overthink. So a self-care habit for me is something that prevents that feeling of overthinking, at least in the moment I'm practicing it. The self-care habit. Okay. Number 2 is to ask yourself if you are going to be doing this thing for yourself or due to some external pressure. This probably tracks pretty well with what I was talking about in my last episode. A lot of times we kind of get overwhelmed by self-care because we feel this immense pressure on ourselves to complete it, almost forced into it, whether it's by someone in our real life or someone online in the form of social media. That is a very real thing. So it's really important when you're practicing self-care, any of these things I say today, to really be honest with yourself in determining, okay, is this something I actually want to do for me or just because of something or someone else? Or even if it's not feeling forced to do it by someone, think about it this way. Would you be doing this to get validation or likes on Instagram or to be able to tell someone and get that sense of approval? Like, if you're doing it for any of those reasons, those are all external reasons, extrinsic motivation, as we say in the world of psychology, that I'm definitely not in. So think about that, because what we want is intrinsic motivation here. We want these self-care habits to be done because you genuinely want to, and you want to do it for you and no one else. All right. Third thing that I measure self-care habits on is, does the process feel enjoyable or like a chore? This often goes hand in hand with number 2. If you are not doing it for yourself, maybe at first, maybe for a little bit, it'll be doable. But the more you do it, you realize, okay, I don't actually enjoy this. I maybe enjoy the after effect of getting that validation or getting those likes or whatever I'm striving for, but the actual process is not enjoyable. So obviously, this one is not necessarily something you're going to know before you try the habit, but even when you are choosing and thinking through some of these things, just asking yourself, does this sound enjoyable, is a really good way to kind of gauge, okay, this may be something I want to do, or this may not really align. The last thing that I would say to ask yourself is if you feel better after completing it, or if you think you will feel better after completing it. Now, I understand a lot of these you aren't going to know until you practice it. But again, these are good questions to ask even when you're thinking about what to do, because oftentimes you can kind of at least give an educated guess for yourself. You can make a little hypothesis. I'm just throwing out the science and psychology terms today. I'm so smart. Literally learned what a hypothesis was in like 3rd grade. It's fine. That's really where my brain level is at right now. So you're in great hands. But yeah, this is something that I feel can be obvious, but when you're actually in the moment of choosing what to do or actually doing that thing, sometimes we don't think about it. We should, though, because the effects of self-care are oftentimes the reason for doing them in the first place. We do self-care so that we can feel better in our everyday life. And if what we're doing is not actually making us feel better in the rest of our life, then why do it in the first place? You know what I mean? So those are the 4. Again, just to recap. Number 1, does it keep you in the present moment? Number 2, are you doing it for yourself or some external pressure? Number 3, does it feel enjoyable or like a chore? And number 4, do you feel better after completing it? So keep those in your mind as I go through this list. I love these kinds of episodes when people just kind of spitfire a bunch of ideas on you. Might not be your thing, but if any resonate, I encourage you again, take a pause, measure them against these questions, or at least give your best guess. Maybe write them down and just take note of how you feel. All right. After I go through this list, I'm also going to give a few tips on, how to start thinking through the choice of what you want to do first, because I think there are going to be maybe a few that resonate with you. And of course, my challenge was only to choose one. And again, not today, but I love giving as many tangible tips as I can. So I will do that after going through this list of techniques. All right. I feel like this is actually the perfect episode for me to be recording right now with the state of my mind, because it just requires me to spitfire, and that's all I have capacity for. So let's do it. The first few I'm going to tell you, You're going to roll your eyes because they're the ones I have been using as the basic self-care examples, but there's a reason why they are told over and over again by so many people. They do work for a lot of people, so I am still going to say them. I also want you to know that I do practice these things sometimes. So they're not bad. I'd have no judgment against them, but the first few you're probably going to be like, okay, that's so obvious. So stick with me. All right. Number one, journaling. Yeah, you guessed it. Love some good writing, some good reflecting. Journaling to me is often very internally focused. So, writing about yourself, writing about your feelings, maybe some affirmations, maybe some manifestations, maybe answering some prompts that you find on Pinterest. You can do it on a physical journal. You can type out notes on a Word doc or do a cute little online journal. You can bullet journal if you're really into arts and crafts. Really jealous of you if you can do that because mine always look insane. But journaling, so many different ways to go about it. Really, really great way to relieve your mind of stress, anxiety, anger, whatever feelings you have. Number two, I mentioned it earlier, meditation. And again, meditation is another one that has so many different forms. Not a one size fits all by any means. You can use meditation apps, which I've done a lot. I have Headspace, really, really like that for guided meditations, especially if you don't know what you're doing. I would recommend that as a good way to start. But you can even do free YouTube videos, or you can literally just sit and close your eyes and let your mind just rest, which I make it sound so easy. It's not easy, but it is nice. All right, number three, listening to music. Wow, that's a crazy take, Meredith, I know. But I sometimes forget just how therapeutic listening to good music can be. And I'm the type of person who has such diverse music tastes. Like, literally, it can go from the most depressing song you've ever heard to the most like hardcore rap song you've ever heard. Like, I have no theme. But when you're in a specific mood, you just kind of have this feeling of what type of music which would make you feel better in that moment. You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it, but if you just play that type of music, that can be self-care. Taking it a step further, another technique is dancing, either just, by yourself to, maybe the sound of music, maybe the sound of your own thoughts. If I danced to the sound of my own thoughts, that would, honestly, I would probably look like that Australian Olympic breakdancer. That's how I would describe the state of my mind. No judgment, by the way. But you can dance by yourself to music, to your thoughts, or go to a dance class. Some of these habits I'm going to be sharing, techniques I'm going to be sharing, are not just necessarily things you have to do alone in the comfort of your home. They can be things that you go out and do with other people. So dancing is one. Singing is also very therapeutic for many people. That's something that a lot of research has been done on that I've seen. The benefits literally of brain chemicals when you sing, specifically something that you enjoy. So you can listen to music and sing along. You can do karaoke, a little a cappella, little opera. So I don't know if I've said this on here, but fun fact about me is that I'm actually pretty good at opera. Like, my opera voice is not bad, I've been told. Don't ask how people have heard my opera voice. Maybe one day, if I feel genuine enough, I'll share it on here, but it is very freeing when you when you sing. I don't always sing opera, by the way. When I was younger, I did karaoke a lot. That was fun. Anyway, I'm just thinking of a lot of things right now. Okay. Next thing is taking a walk outside or inside if necessary, but taking a walk. This is another one that I'm sure you've heard a lot, but getting that movement in, and specifically outdoors if you can, getting into nature is something that can be very freeing for your mind. I think going along with walking is obviously exercise or movement of any kind. I told you I was going to stay away from talking too much about exercise in this series because while that is absolutely self-care, it is so much more than that as well, and a whole part of my brand that I'm going to do mini series on in the future, I'm sure. But maybe self-care is going to the gym. Maybe it's actually trying a new form of exercise or a new form of movement, because I don't think we have to think of everything as exercise. Even if it is, we can call it movement. We can, try a new sport. We can do that, basic cardio, lifting, biking, swimming, Pilates, yoga, boxing, jujitsu. Those are crazy. Um, I even took self-defense classes. That was pretty crazy, but could be considered a form of self-care and self-protection. So that's always good. Anyway, movement. That's huge. Next is reading. Reading, another obvious one, but something that, again, can take your brain away from your current issues, your current thoughts of the past and the future, and bring you back to the present. I know people who love reading fiction every single day. I love people who, I love people? No, I do love people, but I was going to say I know people who read nonfiction every day. I know people who don't read at all and they just listen to audiobooks and podcasts. Same thing. That was actually the next on my list, is listening to a podcast. However you consume information best, do it if that feels like self-care, and also find what you enjoy, because there are different things for different people and different things for different times. Like, obviously, fiction and nonfiction books are very different, and you kind of have to be in different moods to enjoy them. At least I do. Same with podcasts. Listening to this podcast, you probably have to be in a different mood than if you were to listen to, I don't know, a true crime podcast, which this is definitely not that. I mean, maybe it could be one day. If you guys have any crime stories you'd like to share with me, I would love to solve the case for you. Anyway, so those are options. Cooking or baking, another great form of self-care for many people. Some people find cooking and baking really stressful. Some people find it really stress relieving. So try it out, maybe see how it feels for you. I think the other fun thing that you can do, this just made me think of it, but it's not limited to cooking and baking, but with any of these techniques, you can kind of add on multiple into one. So let's say you're baking, for example. I am thinking about that right now because I really want to make pumpkin bread soon. It is the fall season. I love baking pumpkin bread, even when it's like super easy. I'm just like, it makes me feel accomplished. You can bake your pumpkin bread while listening to music that you like and singing or dancing or whatever. Have multiple things going that make you feel good. So, cooking and baking, that's one. This one, I heard from a few people, taking a bath, or as the girlies call it these days, an everything shower, which, if you don't know what that is, I mean, it's pretty, in the name, you can understand that. But literally, like, doing every single kind of deep cleaning you can think of: hair, skin, exfoliation, all the things. Or literally just sitting in a bathtub, reading a book. See, there you go, pairing on more habits. Those are great. Creative writing. That literally was not related at all, but I should have put that next to journaling. Creative writing is another form of self-care for a lot of people that can be very therapeutic, because unlike writing about yourself, you're oftentimes writing something fictional or something that, is just an imaginary scenario in your head. And a lot of times that can be kind of fun for people, again, to get them out of whatever stressors they're dealing with. So that's another random one. Going kind of along with that is any form of art. The ones I thought of right away were coloring, like adult coloring books, painting, even if you're not good. I'm certainly not. A lot of people really like knitting and crochet. Like, I love seeing the people who are getting into those as hobbies. Like, that's so fun. I want to get back into knitting. I used to kind of know how, but I don't think I do anymore. That that brain has to be used for other things. I will say though, fun fact about me is that I have gotten into a certain form of art called diamond art. I don't know if I've talked about it on here because my memory is failing me these days, but it's basically what the name says. You kind of have this sheet of sticky paper and all of these different colored little diamonds, and you use this tool to put the diamond on the corresponding number on the sheet. It's kind of like paint by numbers, but with diamonds and jewels, and they stick, and it's beautiful. And for some reason, it feels challenging because it's like I have to focus enough to know what colors go where. That is so sad that that takes focus, but it does for me these days. But it is also very therapeutic because it's like I cannot look at a screen during that time. I have to be in it, I have to be in the art process. And as someone who's not artistic, this is like the easiest form of art that I've been able to find that I can still enjoy. So if you're not artistic either, maybe diamond art is for you. Next thing, if you're not really into drawing, painting, coloring, diamond art, maybe photography or cinematography is more your thing. Maybe you've never tried it and you want to pick up a camera, see what you can do. I've definitely done that before. Just having flashbacks to when I did a whole photo shoot of my cat in 2015. And honestly, they turned out pretty well. So I'd say shoot your shot if you want to be a photographer for fun, of course, because this is self-care. Go for it. And there are also plenty of tutorials on YouTube for these things. Trust me, I've watched several of them. So they're very fun though, if that's what you enjoy. Another thing, this one is more for the girlies out there, but also if you're not a girl, you can still do this. But maybe try a new hairstyle or makeup look. I do this sometimes. I have tried so many times to do the weird, cute little braids on my hair. I don't even know what kind of braids. I don't even know terminology, but I'm not great at doing my hair. So this one has ended up feeling more stressful for me than fun, because I want to pull my hair out by the end. But I'm not trying to push you away from this, because if you can do your hair, please do your hair. Like, have fun with it. Same with makeup. I'm not great at makeup, but I would love to be. Similar to hair and makeup, maybe looking through your wardrobe, coming up with new outfit ideas. I love to do this every night before work the next morning, come up with a new outfit for the day. But if you really just want to get your life together, just look through your closet and come up with all kinds of outfit ideas, It can be fun, especially if you're in that creative mindset. If you want to actually leave your house, though, you can also go shopping. This, to me, I strongly feel is self-care, okay? Some people might think spending money is not self-care. It certainly can be very challenging on the mind, but it can also be fun in the moment, and that's really what we're looking for. I just love shopping with a passion, really shopping for everything, but I love going shopping for new clothes. I love shopping for makeup, little decorations for my apartment, all the things. Shopping can be fun. Maybe get a little coffee, listen to some good music. I'm all about the music, Get in those stores you like and bam, look at that. You're having yourself a day. That is my idea of a great day. But again, if you don't want to leave your house, we're kind of going back and forth here. Another form of self-care might be cleaning your house. And this, again, some people really, really hate, but I find sometimes it can feel really good. And to that last point I made of, how to figure out if something is a valuable self-care technique for you, ask yourself if it'll make you feel better after. I think for many people, cleaning, even if not always the best in the moment, definitely makes you feel better after. At least it makes me feel like I have my life a little bit more together, just a little. Now, okay, next, this is like a 3-in-1. I just got this vision when I was thinking about self-care of just doing an entire redesign of my house, because I was just thinking about cleaning, and then I was like, well, honestly, decorating, designing in general is kind of fun, even if you're not like physically moving furniture and stuff, which you can do. Even if you're not, though, doing a little Pinterest boarding session, if you're into Pinterest, is so fun. Give yourself that inspiration, sit down on your couch with a little cup of hot chocolate. I don't even know. And scroll, peruse through Pinterest, find some new ideas, make some mood boards. And this doesn't just have to be for your home, this can be for your style, this can be for the life you want to live. You can make a new vision board, which I keep hearing you can do that anytime you want. January does not have to be the start of your year, the start of your goals, the start of your visions. I fully agree with that. If you want to envision a new life for yourself on Pinterest, now is the perfect time. That can be self-care. Next is playing an instrument. I was thinking about this one because I am very committed to learning how to play the saxophone again. I have not gotten a saxophone yet because I'm scared and they are expensive even to rent. I will not buy one because I literally don't know how to play it anymore, but I want to rent one to learn a specific song, and if I learn that song, I will play it. But I don't want to say it yet because I don't want to be embarrassed if it fails. I love that I'm thinking like that. Not, this is a very bad example of how to think about self-care, but the process of playing a saxophone sounds fun to me. I played when I was like 10, 11 in elementary school. I was a band kid and I had fun while it lasted, but then I stopped and I kind of forgot how to play it. But I love it and would love to get back into it, specifically for this one song, though, that I heard like a month or two ago. And I was just like, oh, this is what I need to devote my life to for the next however long it takes. Because I just want to be able to say for myself, that I can play a song that I really like on the saxophone. So maybe you feel that same passion about an instrument, or maybe this is like the weirdest thing you've ever heard. You can take it or leave it, but that's my story. Thank you. Okay, next, completely different topic here, but get a little treatment done, a facial, a massage. I understand these things are expensive. Your nails, a nice little eyebrow wax, whatever it is. Get a little treatment done if you feel like treating yourself. This one I wouldn't say is necessarily something for most of us that's going to be a daily habit. It would be great. That would honestly be a life goal right there, but this could be an every now and then thing that you can be like, yeah, I want to treat myself today. That sounds nice, and if you're into that kind of thing, then go for it. That just can really make you feel put together. Feel like you've got something good going for you. The next one, I did actually kind of touch on this earlier, but take a class. So a class can mean literally anything. So it can be a workout class, sure. It can be a dancing class, sure. It can be an art class. It can also be an online class. I have honestly wanted to try something like Masterclass or Skillshare for a while because I think it's so cool that you can just literally get access to all of these classes to learn something that interests you. YouTube, if you want to go the free route, which I always do, is also a great option. And they have classes. So if there's something that interests you, look for classes and you can learn something, stimulate your brain while also taking care of yourself. On that same note, if you don't want to take a class but you still want to learn about something, consider doing deep research on a topic. And that is literally what I wrote on my phone. I'm just laughing because I'm like, that is so serious, but a lot of people love it. And sometimes I get into that phase. I talked last week about how much I love WebMD and WikiHow and how I could just literally peruse for hours laughing at the pictures, but also low-key learning about myself, I have looked up all of my syndromes and symptoms more times than you could count on these websites. Now, this is not necessarily the deep topic that I was referring to when I wrote this tip, but that just made me think, in my own way, I do love some deep research. but maybe there is a more normal topic that you are interested in learning about. Do research on it. I mean, I think Google is truly the most incredible thing that has ever happened to our world, and we need to take advantage of it. I mean, I already am, but the more we can take advantage of it, the better. So if there's something you want to learn, something you have a question on, look it up, and that might honestly feel fun for a lot of people. It feels fun for me, so that's why I said it. All right, next is doing a little solo date, solo dinner, solo picnic, whatever you want to do solo. Now, you might notice a lot of these things that I'm saying are solo things, and that kind of goes with the idea of self-care. A lot of times I think self-care is related to being by yourself, with yourself, getting to know yourself. Certainly doesn't have to be that way. So I will say, if there are any of these that you're like, oh, this would be so fun to do with another person, by all means do that. Hanging out with your friends, definitely. Like, or whoever you want to hang out with, I don't know. That can be a form of self-care. But sometimes it's the solo dates, the solo drives, the solo dinners, just doing things with yourself. Those are the most powerful experiences, I think, at least for me. I'm also just a very solo person in life. You know, I live alone, I do a lot of things alone. So it's like, to me, this feels normal. To a lot of people, it feels very uncomfortable, but, you know, could still be a good form of self care. I have this little outdoor area. I don't even know what to call it. Like, outdoor area, that could literally mean anything. But pretty close to where I live, there's this huge walking trail, grassy area with water. It's huge. It goes a very long way. I used to go there multiple times a week to train for my marathon, so I know it very well by now. But I have gone there a few times just to literally sit by the water and just chill by myself. It's one of those places where, yeah, there's definitely people around sometimes, but it can be very relaxing, good views, scenic, and it's just a nice place to go and hang out. And that's self-care. But a lot of times I don't actually even think of doing that anymore, just to go be. I always think of it and associate it with exercising or like training or whatever. But I have really enjoyed the times where I go and just sit. So I'm actually motivating myself right now. I might go do that sometime soon. Whatever it is for you, though, whether it's going to sit somewhere, whether it's taking yourself out to dinner or a meal, or just, you know, again, solo date could be that shopping day I talked about earlier. All of those things can be really fun. Just spending time alone. I could do so many episodes about how to spend time alone. Maybe I'll do that next. Anyway, on that point, I already kind of mentioned taking a drive by yourself as like a self-care activity, but I cannot stress this enough. A little solo drive, whether it's literally just around your neighborhood or a full-blown road trip, I've done both. It can be so nice and therapeutic. Therapeutic? Okay, Meredith. Um, very freeing, because again, you're alone with your thoughts. But if you have the right vibes, if you have the right playlist or the right setting, maybe have some takeout and sit in your car and listen to music. I saw a girl on TikTok do that. Love that. Whatever it is, like, that can be a great way to decompress and take care of yourself, especially if you like driving. For some reason, I've found driving to be very relaxing for me sometimes, while still making me feel accomplished, because I feel like I'm getting stuff done when I go for a drive. That in itself is probably a science experiment. I don't know what this means, but that is another habit. The next thing on my list, this just makes me laugh. I wrote this at like 5 a.m, which is why, but it just says peaceful coffee drinking experience. If you like coffee, like me, then self-care can just sometimes feel like a good cup of coffee in the morning or any time of day, really. But just allowing yourself some time with your coffee to just sit and be can be so nice. And to go along with this, or maybe not, watching the sunrise or watching a sunset is incredible for so many of us. Great form of self-care. Again, you compare the two. Maybe you can keep them separate. Not saying I, necessarily recommend drinking coffee at sunset, but I have done it before and I am still here to tell the tale. So, melatonin exists for a reason, everyone. But watching the sunrise or sunset, drinking your coffee peacefully, great forms of self-care, very small, but relevant. Now, these last few, I promise I'm almost done, okay? You're gonna stop hearing from me soon. But these last few are a little bit different than the rest of the list, so if you haven't been listening, now is the time to tune in because you're gonna be like, what is this girl saying? And it'll really make you think, okay? These next few tips are all kind of like, controversial. Number one is think about watching TV or watching a movie or watching something on a screen. That's crazy, right? Most people are like, that is so unhealthy. That is not a form of self-care. You are destroying yourself in that process, which may or may not be true. I will get into my thoughts on that in another episode, but I wanted to put that down because I do think in its own right, it can be a self-care habit. I talked about that a little bit in my last episode. On that same page, video games or something to that nature. If you don't like video games, I don't know why I just thought of like making your own game in your house. Like, I don't know, pretending to be a dog. That's what I did when I was little. And sometimes I have read research on bringing back those childlike games and habits can actually be very, again, therapeutic. I'm going to say that word so many times, but it can feel that way. Video games, though, can also be self-care. There you go. I said it. I said the hot take. Finally, Instagram, TikTok, social media scrolling. I feel like this is off-brand for me to say because I always talk about how much these apps can mess with your mind in a terrible way, but I think they can also be beneficial in the right circumstance. So again, I'll talk about that in another episode in more detail, but just know I do have those on the list. So while I wouldn't necessarily say I recommend those to be the only self-care techniques that you try, I wanted to include them because I also just want to be a realistic person. And I know that for a lot of us, those things are already in our life. And in a way, they do make us feel good. So it's hard to just be like, no, get rid of them, or that's not self-care. So that ends my list. That was exhausting to go through, but I hope some of those resonated with you. I hope you enjoyed my little stories within each of them because I realized I had more thoughts and stories than I originally thought. So there you go. Now, as you listen to these, again, maybe some of them sparked your interest, but if you want to take it a step further and start brainstorming and really start thinking about maybe which 1, 2, 3 you want to start trying, here are a few more questions you can ask to get that brainstorming process going. Now, I'm going to end us here because I want you to take the time to brainstorm, to think about these questions. I'm not going to tell you to have an answer, but these are good ways to kind of take it a step further. So number 1, what sounds exciting? That is what you've probably already thought about because I told you to. But even if it's out of your comfort zone, I'll say, still ask yourself what's exciting. What sounds exciting? It can sound exciting and scary. It can sound exciting and hard, But if there's any form of excitement there, then hold on to that. Remember that. Number 2, when you're, thinking through these options, think through whether or not you're willing to sacrifice whatever it is in your life holding you back from doing that thing right now to accomplish the self-care habit that you're trying to implement. You're probably very busy. You've got a lot of time holding you back. You've got not a lot of money. Maybe you don't want to put in the effort to do something, but what in your life that is a roadblock right now are you willing to work through and sacrifice to make these habits happen for yourself? This might honestly dictate where you can start, because some of these that I just said are very low effort and some of them are maybe a little higher effort or have a higher financial commitment or whatever it may be. There are definitely differences. So be honest with yourself about how much you really can afford to sacrifice right now without completely damaging your mental health or your bank account, because I do not want to be held liable for any bad financial decisions that you make. Number 3, think about, as you go through these techniques, okay, out of all of these, like, are there some that sound more interesting than others because they involve the process of creation or the process of consumption? And what's more important to me? Am I more interested in creating something new, learning something new, or am I more interested in consuming something and just enjoying something that is coming to me rather than, again, putting in maybe that higher effort to create something myself? I'm going to actually leave us there today. There's so much more I could say, but I don't want to push this thing of like, you have to choose right now what you want to do. I just want this to, again, be a way to brainstorm and think through options and start getting excited about things. And in my next few episodes, I want to dig into different concepts a little bit deeper. I'm not going to say much more than that because, we got to keep the element of surprise in here a little bit. But I hope this at least got your juices flowing and gives you something to think about for the next week until we have another episode. So, thank you. I am concluding my TED Talk here, and I will see you next week. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Genuine Gainz. I hope you found something that resonates with you today. Remember, wellness is a journey, not a destination, and it's all about finding what works best for you. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who might need a little inspiration. Let's keep making those genuine gains together, one step at a time. Until next time, take care of yourself.